How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Agave and Cactus Talk. Today I wanted to talk about a question I get asked pretty often, and one I think is pretty important to everything we're talking about here on the podcast. But that question is, when is the proper time to plant my agave and cactus if I want to dry farm? And this, obviously is going to vary for lots of people, but I can try to explain it in a short podcast, and maybe it'll help someone, choose. And I could do that, obviously, by telling you how I do it. And, in my section. So I farm here in High Vista in the Mojave Desert, northeast Los Angeles County, straddling the Kern and San Bernardino border of LA County. But it's a very particular dry area of LA County in California, right? We get about 2-3 inches of rain, and but most of California follows this pattern of most of its water coming in either the fall or the winter, right? It is very rare that we have a very wet spring or a very wet summer. Now, that's general how it usually is, but I could give an example. 2020, we had an extremely wet spring, which led to super blooms here in Lancaster, picturesque landscapes full of gold fields, phasalias, blue pine, poppies, obviously. The Poppy Reserve in Western Lancaster was visited by, I don't even know, probably 1 million people. It was extremely beautiful time. So there are some rare years that are, I would call, wet years, where spring is very wet. And then, obviously, most areas in California are going to receive their moisture mostly in winter, the large majority of it. Fall, you start to see lots of rains, but most areas like mine, it's not very common. So if you're in coastal or northern California, or even down by the border, like in San Diego area, you may receive lots more moisture than Central Valley or the Mojave Desert, right? And then usually in the summer, the only people receiving rain in California is rarely, received any parts of California. But if it does come in, it's going to be in the Mojave Desert and the low desert over there by Riverside. And it's going to be eastern storms coming in westward from the monsoons. So some years we get monsoon rains here. I would say half the years roughly. This year we got a couple small monsoon rains, nothing much, but enough to make a small dent in the drought for the plants. And it was interesting because those rains didn't impact much, but it definitely impacted the rainwater that I needed to add to the plants, right? Because in the summer I'm trying to maybe once in a while, maybe give them some rainwater every month or something if I see them suffering. But the point I'm making here, right, is that you have to go by your locality and the majority of the rain when it's falling. So I'm gonna give you the example of mine and use that pattern, apply it to your area, and see what is the version of that for your area. So in my area, I'll give an example. We may get a couple monsoon rains. That's nice, that's cool. But then, really, we're looking for these fall and winter rains that are going to bring in over 1 inch of moisture, right? Because if we're only getting 2-3 inches of moisture, 1 inch rain for us is a big rain, right? The soil here is so strong that 1 inch rain could stay in the soil for 2 to 3 months, right? And that timing is crucial, because if the temperatures are not hot enough, and it's gotten 1 inch of rain, and most of the soil is a mix of clay loam, that any water that is hitting my soil, it's not running off. It's staying completely in the soil, right? And that means that this water, for several weeks is available in the top 6 inches of soil, and for several months is available in the subsoils, right? Which we talk about sometimes as being usually from 6 inches to around 4 feet. So those subsoils will hold an incredible amount of water, and it's gnarly, because a lot of people think when they go down, this is sand or whatever, and as soon as they water it, it becomes a very compacted, dense clay, and like I said, the loam is on top, and in the desert we have the sand moving by the wind. So what you see as sand is just actually the top layer moving by wind and erosion. As soon as you go down a few inches, let's say 2-3 inches, you start to see that clay loam mixture, and you go down over a foot, and it's mad clay, right? And that allows for the water to go at the top when it hits the ground. The sand allows it for all to filter down, and then go into that clay loam where the plant's roots are at, and then it'll keep percolating down or filtering down into the subsoils where the trees' roots are at. If you start putting trees, they'll start locking in that soil, make it more available for a longer time for the plants. And if you put more, established plants, larger plants, then obviously they're going to do the same thing for your young plants. I give the example here where I may plant agave bulbs or cactus seedlings right up against older agave and older cactus and older pine trees or mulberries or different palo verdes or elm tree, whatever I got there. And those established plants in their root systems are holding lots of water in the subsoil, in the top layer of soil, and that's more available as it's evaporating up through evaporation. That's going up into the air as humidity, right? Well, those young plants can capture it as it's going up through that cycle, and so that's kind of how the soil works here. But this is all pertinent to the thing I'm talking about, because obviously your soil type is going to influence obviously when you want to plant the majority of your plants for the year. So I know as soon as fall comes in, we have the potential for these large storms. So about I'd say 3 weeks ago, we got our first large storm, and it dropped about a ½ inch, which stayed in the soil up until last week, right? Which is great, because you also want the agave to dry out time to time. You want it to have lots of water in its soil, or in the air for it to be able to absorb that. But time to time you want it to dry out so that it doesn't get dependent on all of that water and knows what drought is and can tolerate it. And so my plants dried out for a week after that first large rainstorm of the year, right? And that was at the beginning of fall. And then I started planting like a shit ton. I think I planted like 25,000 agave and cactus in 1 week, right? And then I was like, oh yeah, I'm making good progress. This is great. And I'm doing this progress with just the hope that another rain would come. And if the rain didn't come, I already knew that the temperatures were cold enough that if I applied a small amount of irrigation, every time I did so, I would extend them another 2 weeks, right? So I could apply, for instance, per 1,000 bulbs around 5 gallons, and those 5 gallons would get them another 2 weeks, right? Because they don't need a lot of water, but they just need some water. And then, these bigger rains came a few days ago, and it's been raining for like 3 days straight. Now everything that I planted the past few weeks and past few months, which is now up to, I don't know, like probably 90-something thousand agave and cactus plants, now they're prospering like crazy, because they're in these soils, they have a lot of water, and they're young, so they're putting out lots of roots. And like I said, because the top layer is sandy loam, then that water drains. So as the water is transpiring up, then they have access to it, but they're not sitting in water, and this is crucial. You know what I mean? That's why some of y'all may need to work your soils for agave, because actually the desert soil is fucking perfect for agave and cactus, because it drains away a lot of the water. Even though if it's a shit ton of water, it takes it into those subsoils where it keeps it and holds it for a long time, right? But it's not in the roots all the time, which is great to not cause root rot, give a lot of humidity to the agave or cactus, which would cause lots of pest pressures, right? So that thing might influence when you plant too, right? Because even if you get most of your rain in the winter, that may not be the best time to plant. Maybe at the beginning of your rainy season in the fall, so they have a few months to establish with some nice sunlight before they get those very low temperatures, right? Where they don't really want the water. In the desert, many of our winter days are still in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, which means that I can still get away with the liberty of, planting it outdoors, and even if it's raining balls, they're fine. But in Northern California, where maybe in a shady field with lots of water in the soil, you may start to rot those agave, right? So that may be where you run into the issues there. But the main time that I'm planting, it's going to be early fall because of this, so that I can give several months to the agave to establish itself before the colder temperatures, and as soon as temperatures drop, in that little lull between summer and fall, that's when I start going hard and planting like fucking crazy. And in spring, I also, like I said, we may get some large spring storms. So what I also try to do is have another, say, 20 to 25% of agave throughout the year that I plant in spring. And most people around California, because they're on irrigation, are planting in spring because they're like, oh, temperatures are better, we may get some rains. They're around California where they do get spring rains. So that's also a great time to plant. And in my case, the majority of the time, I'm not going to get spring rains, like sufficient to continue nice growth for the agave. But many years, like I'd say 40 to 50% of the years, I will. So I'm mainly planting in fall and spring. The large majority in fall, because the large majority of my irrigation is going to come in fall and winter. And in spring, I'm planting it as a secondary crop to basically be, supplementing the numbers that I planted in fall. But it's not the main crop, you would say. You get me? Because that's not when I'm getting the majority of my of my rainwater, and that's not when I'm getting the best chance for that agave to grow. But in many places, I give an example: Santa Barbara, Sonoma, Napa, San Diego. These are places that in the spring you can reliably get a good amount of storms, and you can reliably plant out in spring, hoping that if you get at least one rain a month, you're going to be able to establish lots of these agave seedlings, bugles, or young potted plants you put out into the field. So essentially, it's very difficult to get back to this question, right? Like, when should I plant, or when is the best time to plant my agave and cactus for a dry farm? And it's going to be highly dependent on your soil, your rain, when the times is. Obviously, you can find plants affordably, a lot of people, they plant in cycles, right? So I'm always planting stuff all the fucking time. So literally, like, every month I have new seed, new bugle, new plants that I can work with. And that's done on purpose so that I always have shit, right? But if you're planting on, year cycles or many year cycles, there'll be certain times of the year where there's a lot more stuff to propagate in certain species than other times of the year. So it may be, for instance, that, I give this example, a lot of the Mexican agave importers, whether it's big agriculturalists or small agriculturalists that I know, the half dozen I know importing agave from Mexico into the United States, they all do it in spring. Why? Because they see the best temperatures for many regions around California where they're planting agave now, which is mostly coastal and central. So they're getting those spring rains, right? That's why they can do that. But that doesn't mean that the Mojave Desert, that Central Valley, that Nevada, that all these other southwestern areas where agave and cactus may be planted, that doesn't mean that's the best time to plant, especially if you're dry farming, because these people, the Mexican agave importers and many of the big agriculturalists, they're planning on heavy irrigation. So if you're planning on heavy irrigation, you can plant whenever the fuck you want. But the problem is this, that say you're irrigating and you plant heavy in spring or in fall. Okay, what happens if we get a 2020 storm? Or if we get a 2023 winter storm and storm cycles? And then your agave is sitting in, a foot of fucking water? That crop's toast. Crop's fucking toast. If it doesn't die, it'll get so much fucking plague that you won't want it in the first place. So, the point is, the irrigation sounds like a safe insurance for the agave until it's too much. And then, even if you cut all your irrigation off, it's going to be too much. And the whole point of dry farming, too, is not only to save water, but it's literally to grow the agave with the lowest chance of pest, of insect pressure, of fungi pressure, of, bacterial pressure. And guess what is the highest susceptibility, or what gives the highest susceptibility to all of those things? Humidity, having too much water. You know what I mean? It's like I was talking to this one guy, and he was, he was getting mad at me because I was calling him out on some shit. And I won't say who it is, but it's a famous cactus influencer on Instagram. And I told him, you're never going to get over your cochineal problem hosing down your Opuntia ficus indica. And he got butthurt or whatever. He's like, I didn't want to fucking, this is how I get rid of the cochineal. Like, I'm hella knowledgeable. Like, fuck you. And, I was laughing because of all the people defending what he was doing. But I'll tell you what, my family is multi-generation cactus farmers. We've been farming Opuntia ficus indica for much longer than these fuckers that are influencers that, they got 10 years that they got some cactus in their backyard. Like, they've sold a couple things on fucking Etsy or eBay and they think they're hot shit knowledgeable. It's like, dude, like, if I'm telling you something, like, it's for a fucking reason. And obviously, if you got an Opuntia ficus indica that's 8 foot tall, established plant, and it's got cochineal, and you're hosing the fuck out of it, I told him, I'm like, dude, you're never going to get rid of the cochineal, no matter what you do. And that's because the cochineal is living off of the extra humidity. So it's like, you're creating this super humid environment for it. It's never going to go away. It fucking loves it there. You can spray it every day off. It's going to just come back and come back and come back. And every time it does, it's going to be harder until it kills that cactus, because you're literally growing it. Like, on cochineal farms, they take the infested pads and every day they go and spray it. Do you know why they're adding water to this fucking insect every day? Because it needs it. It needs it. Now, when you completely dry out a cactus, completely, its soil, lots of its pads may start to shrivel. You see that as a bad sign, but that's actually a good sign. It's like when humans fucking starve for like 24, 30 hours and then they start to repair their cells and like get rid of all the nasty shit, it's like the body starts to repair itself because it sees that there's not a lot, so it's got to do with what it's got. And cactus are similar, you know, in the sense that when they're dry, they start to, you know, maybe look a little bit sad for us, but they're repairing a lot of shit too. And yeah, I mean, I don't really give a fuck about cactus influencers, but the point that I was trying to make here is that a lot of people are going to go through the same thing in agave. They're going to be like, why can't I get rid of this agave pest? Irrigating it 6 inches. And I'm just going to be like, my God, you know, these people. Because they don't get it, you know? Like, if you're over irrigating your agave plants, then you're just going to make them go to shit if there's ever a big storm like that. And one thing I could say is that, you know, when you choose to plant a dry farm crop, it's also going to depend a lot on your ability to capture rainwater. So, as I mentioned, most of my rain's coming in the winter, and I got lots of storage capacity to capture that rain. So I can take my plants, you know, all throughout spring and even summer with that rainwater, right? If you're not capturing rainwater, to be honest with you, if you're in an area that gets under like 6 inches of rain like me, you're probably not going to make it. You're probably not going to be able to dry farm agave, because only in their second, third, and on year will they be established and be able to live off of just the rain. And you're going to need to capture rainwater to sufficiently irrigate them in the months that they don't have rain, right? So people think dry farming is no irrigation, but that's not the case. It's no, you know, surface water, well water, city water. So you can capture rainwater and still utilize it in the months where these plants may need an extra little bit of water. That's not going against dry farming. You know, dry farming is using only the rain, and that doesn't matter whether you use it on Monday or Friday. You get me? It's like, if you're storing it, that just means that rain is going to go further for you. But yeah, you know, like I said, many other places it's going to be very different in the times that you plant. Some places you may choose spring over fall, but generally you're not going to want to plant in the Southwest in the summer, where you're going to have very extreme temperatures and the heat, and you're not going to want to plant in the winter, where you're going to have usually extreme temperatures in the cold, unless you're in coastal or Northern California, where it never drops under 30. You know, most places in the Southwest in the winter, they drop pretty fucking cold, you know, 20 and under, so 25 and under. That's not good for agave. Most agave species at 30 Fahrenheit, 25 Fahrenheit are suffering significantly. So that's why I choose many of the colder, hardier species. But, you know, a lot of people aren't planting those species, so, you know, they think they're going to go into these colder areas and it's going to be Goldilocks, but nope, they're going to get murked. But, yeah, anyways, hope you learned something today. Just wanted to quickly answer that question, even though it took me like 23 minutes. It's not a simple question to answer for people, and, you know, the fact of the matter is, that's kind of why I do consulting, because people ask me a question and it ends up being like an hour research topic for me. If I actually want to answer it, I could just tell you spring, fall, but if you're an actual businessman, that doesn't do much for you, to be honest. And that's kind of why the consulting is part of it. But I know everyone can't afford it, and everyone isn't going to be willing to pay or whatever. So it's like, that's why the podcast, the videos on YouTube, whatever, all this is free education for you to learn. Because when I started farming agave, there was nobody in California, let alone America, doing it. And, you know, I started making a lot of these videos because I always wished there was somebody like me trying to push people in the agave industry, or fucking teach people in the agave industry, so that I could have not gone through all those mistakes I did, or errors. And that's why I put a lot of this content out, so that, yeah, you don't buy 10,000 agave and plant it in summer or in winter expecting those bitches to live. without a significant amount of work. The best times is going to be following what the dry farmer does. So, dry farming, agave, cactus, any plant, you're at the will of nature. And it's not easy sometimes. It's kind of like the whole living off grid thing. People want to do it until you get 3 cloudy days and you got no power. Your solar can't generate and your stored battery power's out. So, it's the same thing, People want to be dry farmers, and then it gets to the point where their agave are suffering, and then they have to put in the well and start irrigating or whatever, or with any plant in that scenario. But my point is, you got to be very knowledgeable and intelligent on how you approach the whole dry farming. Mulch can help you a lot, maintain moisture. Compost can help you maintain moisture, improving the soil, having animals. Like, there's 1,000 ways to make it an easier way, right, of what I've described today. But in general, it takes a lot of time to learn a lot of that stuff. So what I could tell you is a primer, but obviously as you learn and listen to the other podcasts, right, like, there's lots of different things you could do, You could build berms and not let the water run off your land like I do, so that the water is always soaking in whatever dropped and nothing is leaving. The minimum you could do for your land is make sure that whatever hits the fucking ground doesn't leave, So, a lot of places now in LA County have a rule where any raindrop that hits your property has to be captured by your property. I think that's an amazing rule that I've always followed, because one, water is very expensive, so I don't want to be paying more for water just because my ecosystem isn't built to capture it, because humans fucked it up. So, trying to use the dry riverbeds, if you ever see dry riverbeds in the desert, just be knowledgeable that that's probably in a 1,000-year flood where the water's going to flow. So don't build one in those areas, but utilize those areas. If that's where the water is going to flow in the worst case scenario, build them up. Build them up and make sure your drainages are going to that, right? And that way you can make sure that even during a 1,000-year storm, you can make sure to capture the maximum amount of water possible. So, I've tried to build up the dry riverbeds with boulders and rocks and gravel, so I have more percolation, have more flow capacity, have higher infiltration rates by slowing down that water, right? So in those dry riverbeds, not only am I going to put gravel on top of the sand and build up boulders to build it up, but I've been thinking about putting breaks in it, like every 20 feet, to slow down the water, to allow, even during a giant storm like that, the ability for that water to percolate by running through the land, right? But yeah, lots of different ways that you can improve your ability to dry farm. But in general, I would say the simple answer to this question is fall if you're in the desert or Central Valley, and fall and spring if you're in the rest of California. But in the mark or in the packaging, this would be where the little asterisk is at. There are lots of exceptions. So there could be a place 2 miles down the road that is completely different because of the microclimates, and microclimates are always very significant in farming. But yeah, hope you learned something today about when is the best time to add your agave and cactus plants, and if you need any agave or cactus plants to put, then hit me up. I'll put it in the episode description, all the different places you can hit me up. But right now it's an amazing time to plant agave and cactus. Yeah, we just got several days of really strong storms in California, and it looks like at the end of this week we're going to be getting another series. Tomorrow we're getting another series, and it's just like, this is the fucking time to plant. So get out there and start planting, whether it's from me or from someone else, I don't really care. I just want the whole industry to prosper. But you know, if you need any agave Espadín, you know, agave Desmentiana, you need Cucurella Foltita Medio Picta, Latifolia, any agave or cactus you need, just hit me up, whatever. I'm not gonna list everything I got. But yeah, you know, if you don't get a chance to plant out a bunch of stuff this fall, then like I said, you'll get a second chance in spring, even though we won't have as much water. You know, it's likely we won't have as much water as we're receiving right now in fall and winter time. But it's still a great time because the temperatures are mild and we do get a fair amount of rain in most places, so around California. But yeah, use this primer. It was mostly made for, you know, when to plant around California, but you can use the knowledge from it to learn about how to plant around Australia or France or wherever, right? Just analyze your soils, your climates, like, you know, all the things we talked about today, and see how that's going to influence the what I call it is the best percent or the best chance for the agave to prosper, right? So every year that chance will be different, but it's not easy to calculate, as something the Farmer's Almanac realized over the past 200 years. So every year, spring or fall may be better, or one may be a total dud of a season to plant. But we can't predict the future. So we just have to plant and, you know, assume that it's going to go okay as farmers, and have backup plans in case the rain don't come, like captured rain or having different ways of getting it to your farm. So, yeah, hope you learned something, and have a great rest of the day, everyone. Agave and Cactus Talk out. Peace.